everybody to our final talk in the series Beyond the Prompt. So first of all, the University of Manitoba campuses and research spaces are located on original lands on Anishinaabe, Ininiwak, Anishin-Iniwuk, Dakota Oyati, Dene, and Inuit, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We recognize that the treaties signed on these lands are a lifelong, enduring relationship, and we are dedicated to upholding their spirit and intent. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Monika Verichar. I am director of the Faculty of Arts Media Lab, and I'm also project coordinator for strategic initiative Beyond the Prompt, Generative AI, Creativity and Responsibility, which is led by Dr. David Watt, Chair of English Theatre, Film and Media Department at the Faculty of Arts. This event has also been co-organized by Simone Meyerholtz from Philosophy at Faculty of Arts. And I just need to mention that today's event is funded by the University of Manitoba's Strategic Initiative Support Fund and University of Manitoba's Faculty of Arts. Also, please note if you'd like to take a question, if you'd like to ask a question at the end, I will pass you the mic so that your question is also on the recording because we are recording this event. And now I'm so thrilled that Misagh can be here today. It was such an interesting coincidence. Misagh is originally from Iran, spent about 15 years in Germany, and then recently was living in New Zealand. And when we spoke, he was like, well, actually, I'm moving to Canada end of March. And we were like so happy that he could come here before our grant runs out. Sorry. So yeah, a little bit about Misagh. So Misagh Azimi is an Iranian-German interdisciplinary artist and researcher whose work spans composition, production, and the exploration of creative digital technologies. Misagh composes primarily for stage and visual media, and as a performing musician, produces and releases music through his own online label, Warm Mud Records. Azimi is also the creator of Fragmenta, an open source AI software for generating experimental music. So I will, get you take it from here. Thanks, Misagh.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Khosh Amadid, herzlich willkommen, meine Damen und Herren. Welcome, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks, Monika, for the invitation, for the land acknowledgement, and also for the introduction. Yes, my name is Misagh Azimi. I'm a composer. I'm an interdisciplinary artist working since many years between technology, research, art, science. That's my whole hemisphere of interests artistically and research-wise. I spent a big chunk of my life in Germany. I'm a German as well as I am an Iranian, born and raised in Iran, moved to Germany when I was very young. And I'm very much influenced by the Eastern and Western cultures, philosophically, musically, and you can hear that in my music and my art for sure. I worked for many years, since 2016, as a composer for different theaters within Europe, especially in Germany, and worked with many dance companies as well. If you're interested in seeing my art, seeing my music, seeing my compositions and videos, please go to my website and check them out. But today we're talking about something a little bit different than my usual artistic endeavors when it comes to technology. We're talking about generative AI and the impact on the arts and how to maybe take a different initiative towards this technology than the one already out there narrated by big tech. In the beginning, the music in the background you were listening to was from the band called The Velvet Sundown, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it's an AI band. The music is only prompted. There is no human intervention whatsoever. They made 3 albums in 2025. When it takes 5 minutes to create a song, you can make a lot of it. It's great. It's just a dialogue with maybe 50 years of rock music taken into a model, trained on it, and then you prompt the system and the music comes out. we were listening to that as you came in. My work, since I have moved to New Zealand to pursue my PhD in artificial intelligence, applied artificial intelligence in musical practice, has been very much focused on grappling with this technology. So my approach is very much around having interventions and not accepting the trajectory of the technology the way it is right now. So everything that I will be talking about today is quite critical. So if you have a different opinion, I'd love to have a conversation at the end of my talk. But also, please bear in mind, I am mainly talking about this technology as a commercial technology created and sold as a service by the companies in the Silicon Valley. To prepare for this, I asked ChatGPT 5 to make a topical meme for me that comments on the impact of generative AI on musicians. I asked it to be original and creative, and I don't know what this means. Musicans, God forbid. I sort of get the gist of it. What is quite certain is that this emitted, we don't know exactly how much, but something between 0.5 and 6 grams of CO2, which is like charging an average smartphone for 25%. A rundown of what I will be talking about today is that I think AI is a fascinating and great technology, especially the transformer technology. Since 2017, but I take a highly critical approach towards this technology. I think, and a lot of researchers and people in the scene agree that the intelligence in the current Gen AI is just myth-making with great marketing. Transformers are extremely impressive as a technological being, let's call it. But the current systems, doesn't matter if they are large language models or text-to-audio, text-to-video models, are still prediction models. These are prediction models. We should not forget this. These are prediction models that lack any sort of cognition or intelligence. And anybody who wants to sell you something otherwise is selling you a product. Gen AI, just like any other technology, is not a neutral technology. Any technology brings in with itself sort of a baggage of economy and politics and many other stuff. And this technology also has a lot of baggage. It's VC backed, it's venture capital backed. There's a lot of money in there. And especially with the arms race between the US and China when it comes to AI, it's just very much political. And it's this extractive speculation that harms not only musical, but all sorts of labor and harms intellectual property as well. And the environmental impact is disastrous. I'll be talking about that a little bit later. It's just horrendous and ridiculous that we have to cool down data centers with lake water to create videos of monkeys doing something. It's just insanity. And something that is very important, maybe not to other use cases of AI, but in the creative fields, is that we don't have any problems to solve in creative fields. We seek problems, we go through a process, and the process leads into a whatever you want to call it. Some people call it a product, art piece, whatever. And the results will be published or seen, heard, whatever, performed as an art piece. And the process to get there is the grappling with the problem. To assume that we're solving something efficiently in creating art, I think it's just fundamentally wrong. And I believe that a different trajectory is actually possible. And for that, we need to understand that upright ignoring this technology or just accepting it as an end user is not enough to change its trajectory. So yeah, the Velvet Sundown. You were listening to that in the beginning. This is from 6 months ago. They had like 400,000 listeners monthly on Spotify. I'm pretty sure some of it is because people like me play it to showcase what people are listening to when it comes to AI. But they genuinely have a lot of listeners. It's all prompted. There's a lot of money going into this technology, and I think We have to be very aware of that because that's one of the reasons why we have this spike in this technology being everywhere and everybody's talking about it. One of the reasons is definitely money. So when it comes to music, companies like Suno, I don't know if you're familiar with these companies, but some companies like Suno, Udio, 11 Labs, those kind of companies have raised millions of dollars. I think Suno, as you can see in the first round, raised $125 million, partially from Andreessen Horowitz, classic Silicon Valley venture capital money, and I'm quoting, to build a future where anyone can make music. So this is a dream, to offer music as a service, music creation as a service. Now they have a DAW, a digital audio workstation, or a software, let's call it, to create music in the browser. So you can actually run, I don't know if you're familiar with software to make music, like Ableton, Logic, Reaper, stuff like that. You can actually use their AI prompted software to do it in the browser. Companies like 11 Labs also do voiceovers. Like you can choose a voice that is cloned and you can prompt it with a text in any language, and not any, maybe like a lot of languages, like my mother tongue is not yet represented, of course. But you can prompt it in almost any language and it will do a voiceover for you in a matter of seconds. You can swap the voice, you can do whatever you want. And you can also generate the text to do so with a large language model. So these are the realities of the music business nowadays. And Spotify removes 75 million tracks in 2025 only that were created by AI, and they didn't want them on their platform. So they already have a lot of tracks that are AI generated and bring the revenue back to Spotify. But these 75 were spam tracks, so these were removed. So you can imagine how many AI tracks are already out there. So this is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. So before I sort of position myself, or you think where I am in the whole span of things, if on the left side, just being a Luddite, I hate any sort of technology, I don't want to interact with any sort of technology. And on the right is like being a tech bro, essentially, just loving technology, like it's going to change everything, solve all of our solutions, problems, and it's going to be a solution to all of our problems. I sort of position myself somewhere between techno-realism, humanism, and post-humanism, in the sense that I believe, especially with this amount of money, and especially with what is happening between China and the US, this technology is not going away, and sort of my approach is to sort of accept it as something that is there, and to strive for human agency and artistic agency when it comes to this technology. I believe technology is not neutral. I think technology is also a product of a society. I think tech bias, data bias exists massively, and there are many great reads on this. I want to present some of them to you at the end of my talk. And I believe that participation and interaction are actually acts of activism, or how Andrew Feenberg calls it, democratic intervention. So it's sort of participating to change the trajectory of a technology, and I'm a big believer of that. So I tend to grapple with the technology as well, try to make it my own, and then use it in my own art. I try to make this talk for everybody, so I'm going to go back to basics. If this is something you know, please ignore this. Some people, especially since 2022, the introduction of ChatGPT, associate AI with Gen AI and Gen AI with ChatGPT and AI with ChatGPT by proxy. Well, AI is not ChatGPT. AI is a massive field of research since 1950s. Artificial intelligence is essentially the quest to create machines that can perform cognitive tasks, or to emulate human cognition, essentially. There have been a lot of non-generative AI in our daily lives, even if you're not aware of it. And Gen AI are the systems that can essentially create new content. This is like the whole hemisphere of AI. Not every AI system is built with neural networks. Not every system is made with machine learning. Not every generative system is made. So it's not the same thing. and AI is not a new field of research. It's been around for decades. Very important to understand this, to not be sold the narrative that this was made 5 years ago in Palo Alto in California, and this is an invention of the Silicon Valley. For example, your email filter, spam filter, to come up with classifications of is this a spam or not, that is a simple classification task. It's not that simple anymore, but it's a classification task of using AI based on data to come up with decisions, sometimes binary, sometimes multi-class decisions, to come up with, is this a spam or not? That's already a use case of AI. Recommendation systems on purchases on Amazon. If you bought this, you like this. Voice recognition on the phone when you call your bank or whatever. Or medicine, is this tumor malignant or not? Again, classification. Regression models, when you want to buy a house on a website, it shows you the trajectory of how the price is and will be and whatever. That's a regression model. CAT scans, weather prediction models. These are all use cases of non-generative AI that have been around for many years, essentially. In music and audio, we have had automated mastering. I'm pretty sure a lot of you, if you're in music, are aware of stuff like Lander. You give them your track, and based on the genre of your track and the dynamics inside your track and the spectrum, they will master it to sound like a specific genre of music. So if it's played after a song from somebody else on Spotify, it doesn't surprise the audience that it's too low or the spectrum is wrong, something like that. So that has been around since the 2010s already. How to identify a song on Shazam, classification, playlist recommendations and song recommendations on Spotify. If you like this artist, you will like this artist, and so on and so forth. So this has been around for a long time. We're now more confronted with the sort of commercial generative aspect of this technology. Song generation. You can prompt the system on Suno or Udio and get a polished, mastered song with a verse, chorus, bridge, verse 2, another chorus, and a double chorus at the end. And then it has a person singing on it. It has everything, as you listened to in the beginning with Velvet Sundown. So complete song generation from 0 to 4 minutes. As I showed you on 11 Labs, you can do vocal speech synthesis for voiceovers, easy. If you're on TikTok, it has already embedded these technologies inside TikTok, so you don't have to even go to a different platform to do it. Sound design, games, video games, for example, Minecraft. Minecraft does generate sound design and music on the fly with generative systems within the game, because it's so vast and people can do everything on it. It can come up with stuff on the fly within the game engine. Lyrics generation with large language models, style transfer with like stuff like Irkam's Rave, stuff like that. So if you put it all together, it turns into something that I would love to call, I would love to coin this term, as you usually call software that you use SaaS or software as a service. I would love to call this music creation as a service. We haven't had such a thing before. We have had generative platforms that create songs. I think Melonix, or please correct me if I'm wrong, I forgot the name, have had in the 2010s a platform to generate songs. But in this scale, we haven't had something like this before, to create music and give it to you as a service. You don't have to go through the process of anything. You just prompt the system and say what you want, and you will have the results. The whole pipeline of process from thought to the end product or the artwork is gone. You just prompt the system, and you have created music as a service. And now you can put this together with other models as well. You can do it with video, you can do it with text. So stuff like VO3. Sorry, I have to go out and mute Velvet Sundown. The machine wants to keep playing. Yeah, there you go.
I am fake. This isn't real. I don't exist.
So I prompted VO3 made by Google. It's a multi-format sort of model. It takes text and creates music, audio, sound design, video all together. And this is already like half a year old. I try to be conscious and not reprompt these stuff like every single day when I want to do a talk. So this is half a year old. It emitted between 200 and 400 grams of CO2, which is like charging your smartphone and using it for 2 or 3 months daily for a 7-second video. Just let that sink in for a second. For a 7-second video. And these speculations come, because these are not open models, we don't know exactly, but this speculation comes from an MIT technology review that they did. It's called AI Energy Package. You can go look it up. It's hard to navigate how much CO2 is emitted, but I try to go after resources that actually try to find out as accurately as possible. But yeah, if it's even like using your smartphone for a month, that's already insane. So for 2 or 3 months, yeah. So the creative toolkit is, if you're interested in trying these stuff out for yourselves, you can take a snapshot, or I can send it to you if you want. For text to audio, text to music, Suno is probably the go-to right now. Udio, 11 Labs does, as I already mentioned, also like voice overs, and you can clone your own music. We had a project for a friend who wanted to create the voice of a person who has passed away, a philosopher, and there are some recordings of that person. I'm very concerned about the ethical aspects of this, but theoretically, we could have cloned that person's sound and voice and do whatever we wanted with it. And it's easy as just uploading 3 recordings and that's it. Yeah, I'm just saying. Text to image, yeah, Midjourney on the Discord server, you can just sign up and use Midjourney. I don't think it's free anymore. Yeah, Flux, Stable Diffusion, these are the text to images. If you're interested, you can also go to Hugging Face. Some of them are running on GPUs. You can use them for 2 or 3 images. ChatGPT also does images nowadays as well. Text to video, VO, Runway, Sora. Funny enough, yesterday, Sora is the video creator, like the video platform for OpenAI. They shut it down. They put billions of dollars in this. They got a lawsuit from Disney, just did a deal with Disney to use Disney characters in Sora, and they just shut it down. I guess scaling and throwing money at AI doesn't make it better. Yeah, Kling, Luma Dream, so Sora is gone, will be shut down, I think, by the end of next month or so. Image to video, yeah, just, you know, many of these probably. And I think some of the more exciting ones are the model world, world models, sorry. Like Genie 2 or Genie 3, where you can ad hoc, like in real time, prompt a 3D world and navigate through it like a computer game, and you can change it in real time with prompting it. Google is doing research in that area, and it's quite exciting, but I imagine the environmental impacts will be insane as well. So, yeah, this is like the stack of the whole thing. Now, seeing all these new technologies and shiny little platforms and whatever, you might ask the question if this is all very much new. Well, the transformer technology is very new, like the way convolutional neural networks were new a decade ago or so, maybe even, no, way more back. LSTMs were new at some point, and RNNs were new. But generative systems and algorithmic approaches are nothing new. These approaches and these stuff have been a part of human culture and our definition of society and existence and practices for thousands of years, literally. So generative music systems using generative systems, not generative AI, generative systems have been around for many, many thousands of years, almost. 10th century, Guido Arezzo, coming up with a generative hand models to sort of come up with melody creation. Or in the 50s, Yanis Xenakis making or using sort of architecture disciplines, algorithmic architectural disciplines to write music. This is like one of the most recent examples. Culturally, fire altars in India, in South Asia, in East Asia, have been a part of humanity since, I don't know, 800 BC. Wedding blankets, these sort of algorithmic shapes and whatever, have been a part of West African culture since humanity can remember. Indeed, the name algorithm comes from the name of Al-Khwarizmi, or Khwarizmi, who's a Persian mathematician from the 9th century. So the notion of we invented anything algorithmic or generative is just, I'm not calling it, Matteo Pasquinelli, the Italian philosopher, calls it. It's a shape of epistemic colonialism, sort of taking from other cultures and saying we just invented this, and ignoring that this has been a part of humanity, generative sort of approaches to anything, ignoring it and saying we just made a fantastic product yesterday and you have to subscribe to it, and this comes from us and there's no similar thing in the human history. That's just utterly wrong. So if AI as a research field and generative approaches and algorithms are nothing new, what are we talking about when we're talking about the novelty of generative AI? So AI has been, as I mentioned, a field since the 50s. I think the term artificial intelligence was coined in Dartmouth in the 1950s, 1958 or 9, please correct me if I'm wrong. And there's this sort of AI winter till the 2006, early 2000s, let's call it. And everything that you see here is essentially getting faster and faster and ramping up because of some reasons that I will mention in a minute. In my mind, there are 3 major reasons why we're seeing this. But when it comes to music, you have to understand not only music, but also anything generative. You have to understand that the systems or the architectures that we had before, like convolutional neural networks and stuff like that, were not good enough to be coherent over a long period. So the context matters when you're talking about text or music. It is temporal. It goes through time. If you're saying something in the second 10, then in second 30, if you're changing the key and doing something totally different, it can be experimental music and that can be fantastic, but if you're trying to emulate pop music, that's not coherent anymore. So if your window of convolution is just moving like this and has no awareness of what came before it, that architecture is not good enough for long periods of music. So that's why we had these researches, we had these technologies for years, as you can see, but we sort of didn't have the, let's call it last piece. I don't think that's the last piece, but the last piece for the technology, for the state where we are right now. We didn't have that piece to make a run for where we are right now. As you can see, these are like some milestones in this technology. But what happened in the early 2020s and why are we here where we are, where everybody talks about AI? I think there are 3 major reasons for this. The first one is, as I already mentioned, the architecture. So in 2017, a paper came out, and if you are in AI, you have probably not only read this, but also like mentioned it in like many researches. It's called Attention is All You Need. Google Brain brought it out. It introduced an architecture called the transformer architecture. So as I already mentioned, we have been using neural networks for decades now. But this, I want to make it very simple. Let's say you have a small window of context awareness. It's not context awareness, but you have a small window. And you can see and, based on your data, come up with results. And that result is, let's call it 10 seconds long musically. So that window is your window of creation. That's how convolution works, how CNNs or convolutional neural networks work, or in the most basic form. I'm trying to make it simple. And then they move to the next one, and then to the next one, and then to the next one. So the lack of coherence comes from the lack of awareness from what was before. In transformer technology, through a mechanism called self-attention, you can attend not only yourself as a token, but also everything that came before it, essentially. So you are more aware of the whole context of the whole thing. And that's why you're not doing windows of convolution, but rather, I mean, you can do windows of convolution, but you're more aware of the whole context of the music. That's like, I'm breaking it down to the simplest terms. It's much more complicated than that, but as you understand, this changed everything. This changed especially text, because text needs to be very coherent. And by proxy, it also changed music, because music also needs to be coherent, and it's temporal, and needs to have coherence and cohesion with other parts of the piece. So the first thing that changed this, everything that we see right now is somehow in generative AI systems, somehow related to the transformer architecture. And it changed genuinely everything. And it's a fascinating technology. It's genuinely fascinating. If you want to know how it works, there are some YouTube videos I can recommend to you that break it down very simply. It is genuinely marvelous. And how it's used is also fascinating. The second one is to actually do a lot of stuff that we did research for decades before. We needed the compute power to do so. And our computers for this task were not good enough, not even closely good enough. So it is not unknown that this technology, at least in the West, because China is coming up with their own architecture, is mainly built on the acceleration of graphics cards, because they can do parallel processing. And NVIDIA has sort of, the company NVIDIA has a sort of monopoly in the area. It's changing, it's all changing. You need a lot of RAM. But what NVIDIA did with the Blackwell, I think it's, since 2016, the power of the computation has changed by a factor of 1,000 since 2016. It's insane. So back then, in 2016, they were able to do 19 teraflops, and in 2024, they were able to do 20,000 teraflops. It's like a huge leap. So we have better computation. We have better devices that can do these kind of computation. So we can run models on them, and they can actually create stuff. So even if the research were there, maybe the compute wasn't there yet. And the most important thing is, again, the money. Because this thing has the potential to take over labor and automate labor. Like, who doesn't want to invest in that? As you can see, those three companies up there, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, they own 64% of cloud infrastructure in the world. And they are also massively invested in AI, of course. Microsoft has massively invested in OpenAI, but who hasn't? Suno got money from Andreessen Horowitz. Udio from Matrix Venture Capital. Meta creates open source models like Llama and those kind of stuff, but only to inject those in their platforms like Instagram, Facebook. All of their products now have some AI chatbot. But they have good open source models as well. NVIDIA, of course, the monopoly on the hardware. And all these companies are venture capital-backed companies that got money from some of these and other companies to create. So what I'm trying to say here, none of these companies were in the business of music ever. This is a technological revolution that has nothing to do with music, just like Spotify had nothing to do with music when they changed the economy of music. So what is now very much out there and helps this revolution to take place is the money. And now it's getting a little bit insane. This is also from a couple of months ago. It's gotten even a little bit worse. So investing in each other, getting ownership in each other, reminds me of the 2000s where every company was just investing in the other one, and that one was taking that money to invest in the next one, and that made a bubble. I don't know how it went, but I heard a crash happen. So I don't know what's going to happen here. So it is heavily political and economic. So I'm just trying to say all of these to say this was not my fight as a musician. I didn't ask for this, and nor did you, as an artist maybe. So this is an arms race between political figures, political entities, and economic fights between venture capital, East and West. So I'm just trying to sort of navigate through this insanity. Coming back to navigating through the insanity, we talked about how problem seeking and problem solving work. If you are like me, my home country, as I'm speaking to you right now, my home country is getting bombed by a system called Maven, made by Palantir, started by Peter Thiel. And this system is essentially a classification model made by Palantir. It's a whole system and like an environment of software, but this one sort of comes up with ideas of where to bomb and where not to bomb, and it makes a decision in a millisecond, and it just bombs a place. And it is being, right now, in this very second, utilized in my home country, in Iran, by the US and Israel to bomb Iran. So if you are looking to solve a problem, and that problem is where to bomb and where not to bomb, a classification model is actually solving a problem for you. I leave it to you if it's good or bad, but it is actually solving a problem proposed by somebody. So the US military has insane contracts with Palantir, and they solve these kind of problems with Maven system and other AI models that they have. Or even on a brighter note, you can actually try to cure cancer with this. There are great research, like literally cure cancer. And we can use it in medicine to come up with ideas if something is malignant or not, because we have our limitations when it comes to understanding certain stuff, and AI can do it maybe faster. So there is a problem-solving mentality here. But when it comes to the creative arts, as Simon Holland says, these are open-ended domains, and they're problem-seeking domains, as I already mentioned, and not problem-solving domains. There are, in general, no clear goals, no criteria for testing correct answers, and no comprehensive set of sort of well-defined methods. So it is hard to solve a problem here when there is none, and seeking the problem is actually the goal. And defining a perspective of solving something and getting somewhere is actually redundant. This is more of a comment than a research thing. I think we're somewhere that solving creativity is actually preposterous. What is actually being done here is just serving slop. So if you want to create slop, post it on social media, post it on somewhere, get some clout, some clicks. In this form where it is right now. If you want to prompt something, create it, and put it somewhere, be my guest, but I don't think that is solving creativity, quotation marks, but it's rather just creating content or slop. And for that, might be great, but let's call it what it is. Why am I saying this? Because the impact is huge. The VC of 11 Labs said they're targeting where music was compensated. Jingles, voiceovers, commercials, films, games, stuff that used to pay the bills for a lot of musicians while they did other stuff maybe as well, or didn't do other stuff. Maybe that was their labor, good for them. But they're targeting exactly that, and that is going to be made through a platform, through AI, generative AI, at a fraction of the cost. And that means there will be huge consequences for musicians. A study done by GEMA, the German royalty rights organization, and SACEM, the French one, predicted a 950 million euros loss for musicians in 2028. This is a prediction. I think we're way past this already, but this is for 2024. And they're predicting a huge sort of loss for musicians, voiceover artists, anybody in this area of creative industries will be affected by this massively. And please understand this. This is not only about people losing their livelihoods. Music is dependent on an infrastructure of education, people being part of communities, teaching children, playing small concerts at a bar, people coming together, people interacting. There is a whole environment that music sustains. It's not only about making money and making a livelihood. This has been under threat for many decades. Oh, essentially forever. But I mean, platformization through Spotify made it insanely hard for musicians to make money out of this. But now, even taking the streaming part also out of the equation and just making it transparent that your labor is in this system and you're not relevant anymore will have massive consequences. People who sustained this whole environment of education and interaction and everything that sustains culture, if they're not able to make a living out of this and are impacted by this, that will have massive consequences, not only on their livelihood, but also on our society. And I think we have to be very careful of that. And that's not the only impact, of course, the way I mentioned. And these are from the digital library of ACM. If you're interested, because I need to move on pretty fast probably, do we have maybe 15 minutes or so?
Yes.
Cool, great. So I'll just move on this a little bit faster. I can show you some examples. I can send this to you. There are, this gets updated to show you the environmental impact of generative AI. What I found to be insane, and this is from a little while ago, that training a foundation model, and these are smaller models than the ones that we have right now, took over 300 times more than flying from New York City to San Francisco for one person. So if you're worried about flying and your carbon footprint, yeah, quite insane. So to get out of the slump of, oh, this is all bad, let's talk about what's been happening against the trajectory, not the technology. I love the technology, but the trajectory of what's happening commercially with this technology. So, there are a lot of lawsuits, of course. New York Times sued OpenAI because they used their articles without asking for consent. And please understand, finding out if you're trained on or not, it's pretty hard. There are some platforms that I can send to you if you're an artist to see. One of them is called Am I Trained On, I think. I have a list of them, I can send it to you. It's pretty hard to see if you're trained on or not because of the nature of this technology, at least for now. I think that will change pretty soon. Yeah, a lawsuit by the Recording Association of America. They just settled a couple of months ago with Suno, and Suno also settled with Warner Music. And funny enough, they have a cooperation now because labels have been exploiting musicians for decades already. So now they're working together. So this means that people who are signed to a label, a major label, will probably get compensated a bit, but all of our music that was on the internet and allegedly was trained on is free data. Nobody needs to compensate everybody else, just the ones that are having a deal with majors. The EU has done some stuff, the EU AI Act. I don't know, having lived in the EU for so long, EU is very, very old school, very slow, very impractical. For example, the EU AI Act asks for opt-out provisions. That means like you have to actively say, I don't want my music to be trained on. And that needs to be machine readable. That means we have to upload everything again with machine readable material. Inside. Like how is that? Yeah, I don't know. It's very impractical. Anyway, we have to be still working on these sort of licensing and sort of rights deals to get better legal and regulatory results. In the meantime, there are some open source models. So if you're interested in interacting with these models yourself, you can go check out Stable Audio Open. They have a smaller model now as well. Aircam has been working on Rave for years, and it's a fantastic model to do style adaptation. So this needs a lot of understanding of how to work with this technology still. Even if you are interested, to just work with it is not as easy as that. You at least need to understand a little bit of Python to be able to interact with this technology. So to just say we have an open source model, it doesn't mean you have access. So this claim of democratization is a little phony because you still need to be able to work with this, you know? It's out there is not enough. And of course, again, the VRAM problem, the RAM problem, you need devices that are capable to run these models. You need a lot of RAM, and RAM is getting expensive and expensive, so computers are going to get more expensive because they're just going to sell RAM to AI companies and not the end consumers anymore. It's insane. Of course, the market dynamics favor convenience over transparency. So a lot of artists have been grappling with this, coming up with their own ideas. I leave this to you to sort of find out who's been working with AI. There are a lot of good work being done with AI, but none of them, almost none of them, is going the route of prompting and having a finished product. So you can prompt and get something out of it, but then do something with it. So go through the process at some point, but none of these processes are going through just prompting and then using the end product, because you are not a part of you're not a participant, you're just an end user essentially. So yeah, a lot of human AI collaboration, especially in the research space. I can definitely recommend for you to check out ACMI or NIME or ISAIA, these sort of research-based conferences and performances that showcase a lot of like cutting-edge research around this area. Yeah, and there are, of course, useful, I think semantic control of music making can be something that in the future will be very interesting. So when it comes to, let's go back to what I just said, it's not enough that it's out there as an open source thing. You need to be able to work with this thing, right? So that's what made me come up with the idea of making Fragmenta. So Fragmenta, what I made is essentially an environment for you as a person who doesn't know how to code or doesn't know what AI is, to be able to interact with two models, and I'm trying to expand it to have way more models, and for you to maybe with the small set of data to be able to train your own model only with your own data, which is a huge challenge. But essentially, we can visit it on Hugging Face. So essentially, you can, if you have your own data, you can upload it. And please understand that it's not enough to upload like 3 tracks here and then train a model, because this model that we're using was trained on 470,000 tracks. So to have an impact, you need a little bit of more, like at least a couple of hours of music. And then you can annotate it, because later when you prompt the system in the embedding, the text, the annotation is sort of connected to what's in the audio. And later when you prompt the system, the embedding in the language model, sort of when it denoises, it uses that embedding. So the way you tag, let's call it, or annotate this audio will have an impact later when you use the system to generate music. And this brings me later to what I call conditioned stochasticity. That's my framework to how to use these models creatively, is that you can intervene at every single level. Here, you can upload a guitar and call it a street noise. So there's already a level of stochasticity and randomness in here. Or you can call it a guitar. You can do whatever you want, essentially. So you can introduce new levels of interaction in the pipeline level. Not in the code level, because this is for an end user. This is not for people who already know how AI works. So when that's done, it creates a whole data set for you automatically, so you don't have to go through JSON files and whatever. And then you can use one of the open source models provided by Stable Audio to train your own model with your own data. Again, don't upload 2 tracks and think that the results will happen. But when that model is ready, you don't have to go through this at all. You can just generate music. You don't have to train the model at all. You can just go to the generation tab and just use one of the models and generate music with it. Then you can prompt the system whatever you want, choose a length up to 47 seconds. With the big model, with the small model, it's only 11 seconds. And then generate audio, and in the background, it chooses a model. It goes through the inference process, and it gives you 47 seconds of audio and music, and you can use that to create music with. My goal here is to make it not only more accessible, but also more ethical, in the sense that you can run this on your own computer. It's available on my website. You can run it on your own computer through building it on GitHub or running it with Docker. And no data, nothing will go anywhere. It's on your own computer, it's local, there is no connection to the internet after you're done with your whatever installation. So the goal here is to make it not only personalized, but also more ethical. Currently, it's a little slow on computers that don't have graphics cards. That's why we have been hosting it with Monica on Hugging Face. So the workshop that you did, fantastic workshop that you did, people can use the system. When that's done, you can see a track here, and then you can download it and use it in your own music. So that's one of the approaches that I have taken. To actually use the results of such a system, I have come up with a framework called Conditional Stochasticity. This is a research paper, but also a performance that unfortunately cannot take place because it was invited to the International Symposium for Electronic and Emerging Arts, ISEA, in Dubai. But as we know, there's a war going on in the Middle East, and therefore it's been postponed to the end of the year. So the idea here is, in the research paper, to connect generative AI, as I already mentioned, to the traditions that have existed before ChatGPT. Essentially, music's experimental tradition of stochasticity and randomness and other stuff, and bring it in and make music with this. So essentially, as a user of these sort of technologies, you're not a prompt engineer. You don't prompt and then get something and live with it. You intervene at every level. So as I already mentioned, you can train the model. You can upload audio. You can upload sounds that are weird, your family's recordings, whatever. You can tag them falsely. You can tag them differently. You can intervene the way you want. Or you can just use a straightforward, give it 10,000 guitar recordings and make guitar tracks for you, whatever. And then you prompt the system. The prompts can also be stochastic. You can, as I show you later in my own composition, you can just do anything, no musical context whatsoever, and see what it comes up with. Or just go for musical context. That's also possible. And in the assembly, you don't accept the results the way they are, but rather you embed them in your own compositions. You create with them as if they are a synth recording or whatever a musical fragment is, just like that. And then situate the whole thing within the tradition of experimental music. I can, for the end of the session, we can take a look at the composition that I have done. And if you're interested, as soon as the paper is out, I can actually, this is also on my website. If you're interested to download the score, please do so. Collective Consciousness. This is the score. We can't see anything, but as you can see, it has its own set of notation, and unfortunately, I can't see the button here. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay. I'll try to just play it, and then with that, do you have sound? Yeah, there we go.
だから日本でやってもいくつかはそうだから言うじゃん一番多いのは愛するやつ1 years and 10 Karen wants to hear it where they are all giving that oh that is that stuff is very important Karen wants to hear it where they are oh Karen wants to hear it where they are oh Karen wants to hear it Karen wants to hear it where they are all giving that
We were listening to the mono version, I'm sorry. Anyway, at the end of the day, music is not and has never been about efficiency, and I think nobody has walked out of a concert and said, oh, that was optimized. What I'm trying to sort of say that is that we're not going to quit making music because AI can make it. We have been making music for thousands of years because it has been a part of our everything, rituals, sorrow, happiness, everything. And we make music because we are very fragile, contradictory, emotional beings with hormones and bodies and brains that want to express themselves. And that a machine cannot do that and has no desire to do so is not a limitation of the machine. It's just the way it is. It's a prediction model that wants to do something that is not in the scope of why we have been making music. If you want to make music with the system, a commodity that you want to use, want to sell, want to exchange, that's great. But we're not going to quit exploring music and making music only because a machine can do it. However, the impact of this technology, the way it is set up right now, is so massive on an infrastructure for musicians to keep everything that has been a part of society. It is so massive on them and might negatively impact them that these explorations of music might become harder and harder for people to do because not only their livelihoods but also their impact in society will be affected by this. So I encourage each and every one of you to not only be a participant in criticizing this technology, but actually genuinely getting within the realm of what you can into this technology and trying to actually grapple with it and to see where you can make an impact. I know as a researcher, as a musician, my impact might be very, very small, but I think if a lot of people leave small amounts of impact, we can genuinely change not only the trajectory of this technology, but also how our art, culture, and society in the future would look like. With that, I thank you very much, and thank you, Monica, for having me, and thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Who has questions?
Hi. Vielen Dank, Misagh, für diesen faszinierenden Vortrag. I have two questions that might be interacting a bit. So the first one is in a way a question to all of us who are in a way techno-realists but critical. How is it possible to be at the same time engaging with the development? You have to know what you criticize, of course. How can you, on the one hand, intimately do the work, come up with fragmenta, which allows more and more of us to, in a way, make the musician and the whole studying of music, studying of instruments, unnecessary. Like, in that way, how can we, on the one hand, be complicit, but on the other hand, still be critical? So I think this is something that we all have to deal with, everybody of us, in our own fields. So that's the one question. In a way, it's an aporetic tension, it seems to me.
Yes.
And the second question is, how did, in your development as a composer, as an artist, the more and more intimate engagement with this technology of generative AI regarding music alter your own musical taste, your own musical aesthetics, what you expect from you, what you want to hear with regard to your own output?
Yes.
So these are the two questions.
Vielen Dank für die Fragen und danke, dass du hier bist. Vielen Dank. Well, the first question is very fascinating because I think I always compare it to a question of how can you be a Marxist and take the bus and then pay for it and go to your day job and get paid, and like how can you participate in a society and be a leftist? Like, isn't that contradictory to participate in capitalism and still exist as a human being in the Western society? It is very similar, isn't it? Because participating in a system that is oppressing, when it's sort of mandatory because it's ubiquitous and you make the decision to exist in there, it doesn't mean that you're happy with its means and with its oppression. It is I'm not saying it's as easy as that. I'm just saying the contradiction is there. The decision is between either participating and trying to change its trajectory somehow, or just accepting that it's going to ruin society in simplest terms. So this means my approach is very much pragmatical. So if I'm very honest, I would rather maybe not work with generative AI at all when it comes to the environmental impact, when it comes to the impact on me. I'm a GEMA member, so usually my money comes from performing at a theater, and GEMA goes there and collects the money and bring it to me. So I understand how the impact of this technology on my livelihood in the future, and already is essentially. So I have the choice between pragmatically deciding to make a very small impact and hope that a lot of other people do as well, or not participating and being a Luddite. And I think I respect the other decision as well. If you're a Luddite and you just don't want to participate, I think that's a very respectful decision as well. I think that's great. My approach is only because of my pragmatic nature. More pragmatic, that's it. And the second question, when it comes to music, that's also very fascinating because I've been observing how the aesthetics changes when it comes to the results of this this kind of technology sonically. My first album was a rock album. I have done a jazz album, jazz electronic album, and I have a whole techno sort of performance thing that I will also perform tomorrow night. A part of it is more or less experimental, but the other one is very much club sort of music. And I've been observing, the more I grapple with this technology, I want to go away from sort of polished music, because if a machine can make it perfectly, I'm not interested in it. I want something that has my own sort of expression inside of it, and that has become more and more abstract the more I've been experimenting with this technology. Funny enough, I have been observing that also with other sorts of technological intervention when it comes to arts, when it comes to, I don't know, synthesis or modular synthesis. When I work with them, I'm not interested in creating a polished pop music track, but rather something that is not possible to do with a guitar or any other instrument. Yeah, so moving away from realism and getting into more abstract niches of sonic tension, yeah.
Hi, Misagh, thank you for that wonderful talk. My question is, do you think that the stigma attached to these generative technologies is a net positive when you factor in the tangible impacts that you mentioned?
That's a very good question. I think it's a double-edged sword. It's very, yeah. I think as a person who is actually using this technology and tries to sort of navigate his way through this trajectory alongside other people who are only end users, it is very healthy to have sort of skepticism towards this technology and sort of through criticism and sort of critical approach, try to not accept it the way it is. But at the same time, I think the people who make this technology, they don't care. Like there is no stigma there. There's just efficiency, getting the product out there, and it's on us to be critical, and I think it's very necessary. If you mention that the stigma, it is necessary to interact with it, because if you don't, your criticism becomes sort of, I don't know, a moot point. I'm not saying being a Luddite is irrelevant. It's actually a sort of activism, but like I just genuinely think being critical and engaging with it, using it and criticizing it makes it more impactful. But that's just my opinion. I accept every other approach as well. Yeah, that's just my opinion. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question, if that's
Yes.
okay. So with that in mind, I do think that there's a sort of Duchampian potential with these generative models that I think that maybe like. So I guess my question is, what is the line for you for the technology as it stands right now between slop and art? Because like I said, I do think that there's
Very good
potential
question.
here with an aesthetic criteria that has not come forth yet.
Yeah. The Duchampian sort of comparison is apt. I think there are fundamental differences though. If you're talking about ready-made objects, you're talking about the context of the object as an art piece, right? If Duchamp is bringing in something like a toilet to a museum, the context of the artist declaring this as an art form makes it an art form. Here we're talking about an end product of a tech company who wants you to subscribe to their system that is very much homogenized and doesn't function in any other context. A toilet is art when it's not in its, Duchamp declared, it's not in its initial context, but in a different context. But a piece of rock music made by Suno, there is no other context. It's just generated music for a specific purpose. So as long as you change its context then it becomes a Duchampian sort of art piece. However, as soon as you make that decision, you are intervening as the artist and you're not just consuming the end product. So again, you're just bringing the human in the loop, and that makes sense to me 100%. If you want to say anybody can make art, and you have to sort of change the context. You can't just prompt it and say it's art. Well, it is by all means. But to make it ready-made object, you have to change its context and bring it into something that is not its initial sort of context. And if you do that, definitely, but you, again, introduce the human element. And that is what I've been talking about since the beginning, the human agency. If you're doing that, good for you. That's already art. Of course it is. But just sort of making pop music. And go to their Discord server, like prompt, upload it to Discord, new album, 10 seconds. That's great. Let's do that. That's socializing. That's musicking, how Christopher Small calls it. Musicking, like the act of musicking. Everything is musicking. Prompting a system and uploading it is musicking. But as an artist, I think there's more to just creating something and declaring it art without changing anything and going through any process. I think I'm very critical of that. Yeah. But very good comparison. That's very cool.
I just wanted to add on to that, your question about the sort of a Duchampian sort of projection in the sense of looking at the code and looking at how could one take the code and the mathematical equations out of context and use them. And maybe that would be something that I would see as a recontextualizing. I don't have an answer, but that's just a speculation. And I did have a second question, and it was about memory and transformer models, and whether or not, if you're using, does the model have a memory when you're using a transformer model on top, excuse me, on top of that? Because I'm wondering if there's just vestiges. I work more in visuals as opposed to sound. So I do see visually there's certain memories of past trainings if you're using like a stable diffusion model specifically, and sort of like the early stable diffusion models. And I wondered if anyone wanted to comment on memory and machine learning.
If anybody wants to comment on that, yes, please.
Mine is not necessarily a comment, just like semi-related. My question is about if you've heard of this nonprofit called Real Good AI, where it does the research on, like you said, like finding out the effects and the sort of mitigation.
Yeah.
I was wondering what you thought of that, and also the sort of, you compared the bubble, right? How generative AI is based off of like existing material, but we don't know exactly where that material is coming from, and that existing material might already be AI and kind of like eat into itself and kind of degrade over time.
Yeah.
Just wondering what you thought about like those two things.
An echo chamber?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, very good question. I have to answer your question first and then come back maybe. Because I think we missed on your memory comment. And then I'll come back to you in a second. Well, it depends on how you define memory. I mean, as long as you do not retrain the model with new material, that's not in there, of course, right? And if you're working on a certain project, as soon as it leaves your RAM, it's not in, like literally not in memory anymore, because the context is gone. It's not in there. And that's why I'm a very big fan of doing LoRa's, like training on small data sets on top of what you already have, like fine tuning. Small data sets, use the model already, but then steer it towards something else. You can do that with images. There's also good research being done by a colleague at Meta Creation Lab on a software called Autoloom. It is a real-time generation software for visuals. You can train it on your own data set as well. So it can take your own memories and then train a model on it. And you can use it actually audio reactive in real time by a researcher called Arshia Sopan, he's doing a great job on that. But with audio is the same thing. So essentially, as long as, this is my approach towards it, if you want it to be personalized, you need to give it your own memories. So give it your own things and then train on it and then use that from then on. Yeah, when it comes to smaller models, of course, if you feed it something, the impact is going to be bigger. But if you have massive models like Stable Diffusion XL, I don't know, 100 images will not going to make a huge difference as long as you don't do a LoRa. But something that's very fascinating to me is that's why I called the piece collective consciousness, is that AI is essentially in this form, generative AI, when it comes to text, images, and music, is sort of having a conversation with our ancestors, because everything that was produced, created, written, has been allegedly, don't sue me, allegedly used to train all of these foundation models. So it's all in there. So every time you're prompting a system, and that's a very romantic sort of way to look at it, but also like technologically, you're using a pool of interpolations between a cloud of predictions. So that is trained on the probability of the stuff that have already existed. So we have taken all the humanity's knowledge, made it into tokens, and created probability clouds, and every time we generate, we sample something from it. And so we're sort of having a conversation with the memory of everybody who was before us. And that is somehow romantic, scary, wrong, somehow. I don't know, I have mixed feelings regarding that. So yeah, that's my comment on the memory thing. When it comes to these sort of approaches, I'm a big fan of any sort of intervention, because I think we have to attack this on many different fronts. So literacy on this technology is way harder than what it was with digital technology. So if you look at your grandparents, I don't know, a person who's like now 90 years old had probably struggled to set up their banking system on their phone, right? But it was somehow possible. But to grapple with this technology, you have to know Python, you have to understand data science a little bit, you have to understand how AI works, what is a neural network, to be able to even like interact with this a little bit with an open source model, you need to have a lot of technological knowledge, and that's not possible for everybody. So I think literacy is one of them, but also, as you mentioned, approaches that look for infringements in models, look for tagging data and finding out if a model has been using certain kinds of data, models that are ethically trained. So different fronts to just get in there and approach this from many different practical and theoretical and legal fronts. It just makes a huge difference, and I think every one of them is welcome. I'm just sort of pissed off at the EU with the power that they have been very conservative about this. So I sort of need the EU leaders to sort of buckle up and do more, because they changed Lightning to USB-C. I want them to change more. Please do. Yeah.
This might be a bit too specific, but at the start of the talk, you mentioned Spotify removing 70-some million songs, flagging them as spam. And I'm just wondering, within this like large genre of kind of AI slop, what is the line between spam and Velvet, Sundown or whatever?
No idea.
Oh, great.
No idea.
Cool.
No idea. I was mentioning this earlier, that Spotify employed one of the godfathers of this field, François Pachet. He used to work at IRCAM, which is the French Center for Acoustics and Music and AI and everything, and they're fantastic. IRCAM is fantastic, so look him up if you're interested in these kind of stuff. And he worked for Spotify on generative AI, and we didn't know about what, and now we know about what. So it's been embedded in there, I think, since 2015, 16, I'm not sure exactly when. So they've been working on these kind of stuff and not talking about it openly, so no idea. And that's why I'm a fan of like open source models, to be able to get in there and see what's going on if you can. I mean, you can't go through the data, but you can sort of know more. But with Spotify or Suno, these are private companies, no idea. Not private, their stock is traded, but still they don't open their doors to everybody. Yeah, so no idea.
I was wondering if you have an idea, what do we expect to happen when people begin to lose jobs from, when it stops being economically viable to make music, even though like we still, maybe you practice it as a hobby, but when there are no longer like financial incentives to do so, do you not expect like, maybe like, what do you expect to happen?
Are you a musician?
Amateur.
Amateur, okay,
Yes.
Cool. But are you looking for the trajectory of making money from music at some point?
Well, I mostly do it for my own personal, of course, recreation.
Amazing.
But in an ideal world, I would like to make money from music.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's a highly speculative question to answer, of course. And I think everything that I say will either be right or wrong, so it's 50-50. But I have done my research when it comes to this topic, but my answer will be only personal and not as a researcher, as a person who's speculating. I can highly recommend this to you. Fabio is a fantastic person. He's an Italian researcher, now working for Sony AI. He's a friend. He has been digging on Spotify and now Suno and Udio and AI for decades. He's a senior researcher now at Sony in Spain. But he has been asking this question, where does the buck stop, is actually a question that he's asking about streaming and AI. And at the end of the day, and I'm not quoting Fabio, but at the end of the day, music as a business has been not a place to earn money for a long time. So these problems that I already mentioned earlier, these are the last nails on the coffin, let's call them. So streaming has already done this to musicians forever, like since 2006. Labels have done this to musicians for decades. So this is nothing new. Music as a commodity has been traded, and the people who make it have been exploited for decades. So this is nothing new. This is just maybe speculatively attacking something that wasn't attacked before, which is making the music itself. So you're not exploited, but rather your labor is taken through a process that Kate Crawford, an Atlas of AI, calls an extractive practice. Your labor, your music is taken, turned into tokens, trained a model on, and then you become obsolete. If you're not compensated, your labor, very Marxist to be on, hidden labor, dead labor. Your labor is not seen. Your labor is gone, and somebody else is profiting from that. And up until now, we had sort of people who worked and got exploited, very Marxist. Their music was exploited, and then they got some money. Some of them didn't make it, but the ones that made it got some of it, but somebody else profited from that more massively. And now, with streaming, that turned into an even harder system because everybody, that's a dilution, everybody can make music. That made it harder for people to get compensated. So again, harder. And now we're at this point that our labor is essentially irrelevant. Irrelevant if they need a new model. It is relevant again because they need new data. But essentially making music for commercial purposes can be done through a platform. So it is a continuation. It's not like while AI happened. Like a lot of people think people are getting laid off in tech because of AI. No, it's just central banks for 25, 26 years printed money, gave tech companies 0% credit. They made companies out of it, and now money is not cheap anymore. They're letting people go. It's not because ChatGPT can predict a text structure. So my prediction is it will get worse, definitely. Because if somebody can cut costs on music production in their, I don't know, Netflix production or whatever, they will definitely do that. It's a profit system. But again, it doesn't mean we're going to not make music anymore. But making a living out of music will become harder, 100%. Yeah, as if it wasn't that hard already.
A very short question relating to one of your foils. What is fake music?
Is that a short question?
You opened a can of worms. Well, deliberately, I didn't call it fake music because I knew somebody was going to ask me this question. This entity is fake, not the music. So the music exists, definitely. I mean, there is probably no fake music. I mean, I believe in the Duchampian sort of approach towards music, that anything that is moving through air is music. Or not Duchampian, or maybe more John Cagean. But I don't think fake music exists, to be honest. Yeah, I think everything that moves air pressure towards our ears can be considered music. Yeah.
All right, thanks so much. So before everybody goes, I wanted to actually say a few words about the Fragmenta workshop.
Yeah.
Because there's a few of you here today that have been playing with Misagh's program Fragmenta. Madison was one of them. And we are presenting the pieces that we made at the workshop tomorrow. It's public domain. There's going to be a party, and Misagh is also performing. So that's 633 Portage Avenue. You can go on our Instagram, Media Lab, to find out more and like full lineup. But I just wanted to say that what I liked about the program is that you can only create 47 seconds, and I don't know if you had a plan to change this, but I actually think it forces you to, instead of generating a whole piece, to actually then you have to involve the process more. You have to involve editing. And then like, yeah, because the pieces are too short, and like every time you prompt, it's probably generating like something different. So yeah, I just wanted to say I'm excited to maybe install Fragmenta at the Media Lab and have it kind of available to play with.
And the answer is no, you can't, because I'm using already trained weights from Stable Audio, so they cap it at 47 seconds. And that's why I chose these weights, because it's good for these kind of approaches, right? It's not finished music, it's just very limited, and you have to go through conditioned stochasticity to embed it in your own music.
Exactly, yeah. So thank you so much, Misagh. This was really great. Thanks for everybody for coming, and please come tomorrow to our party called AI Has Feelings Too.
Thank you.
So I'll see you there.
Thank you. I'm actually curious to know, I just put fast something on here. I'm curious to see what it made. Apparently this is the sound that comes out of this. Good luck making music with this. Thanks for coming.